Good afternoon. Now, as US President Donald Trump unveils his 21-point plan to end the Gaza war, reactions are mixed across the region. While Arab states cautiously welcome the proposal, deep divisions erupt inside Israel, where far-right voices demand total victory and West Bank annexation. In Gaza, the occupation army continues deadly strikes, even as talks of a ceasefire intensify, and Trump expresses optimism. Now, Trump has said that there is a real chance for greatness in the Middle East. Meanwhile, Netanyahu is meeting Trump tomorrow in the White House, where they are expected to discuss the plan. Will Trump's plan end the war and open a real path to Palestinian statehood? Can Netanyahu resist pressure from his far-right allies? And how will Trump convince Netanyahu to change course? Welcome to In Depth. The Washington Post has reported that details of President Trump's 21-point plan to end the Gaza war leaves open to the possibility of Palestinian statehood. The proposal calls for an immediate ceasefire, frozen battle lines, and the release of detainees, and remains within 48 hours. It demands Hamas disarmament, offering amnesty to members who renounce violence, and outlines a transitional governance system led by Palestinians and international experts, backed by a US-created oversight body. The Israeli occupation army would eventually withdraw, except for a perimeter presence. The plan includes large-scale reconstruction under a Trump development plan and expanded humanitarian aid, though financing details remain vague. It also proposes detainee exchange tied to aid delivery, while Trump says a deal is very close. Neither Israel nor Hamas has accepted it. Netanyahu, facing pressure from far-right allies, has rejected any Palestinian statehood, making implementation highly uncertain. Well, for more analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Mr. Mohammed Osman, International Relations Specialist, and from Washington by Ms. Ginger Chapman, lawyer and political analyst. Welcome to you in our program here in depth. And let me start here with Mr. Osman this time. President Trump unveiled a 21-plan point to end the Gaza war. From your perspective, does this plan mark a genuine U.S. shift towards Palestinian statehood? Why? And will he be able to convince Netanyahu to abide by
it? Thank you for having me, Mona. Does this plan, and of course, greeting to you and to your audience and to Mrs. Chapman, does this plan signal a gravitational shift in Trump's stance on Palestine and with regards to Palestinian statehood? No, far from it. There is no clear reference to any immediate or imminent roadmap for a Palestinian state in Trump's 21 points. If anything, it states that after the reform of the Palestinian Authority and the reconstruction of Gaza, both will take years, then a certain form of statehood will be considered. So this is so far from any stern commitment to the two-state solution. So this is my answer to this very particular point. However, in the larger picture pertaining to the current situation transpiring now in the Gaza Strip, does this plan have any promising prospects? Indeed, it does. It does entail that the Trump administration is willing to engage more seriously with the situation in Gaza in a more balanced way. They are willing to push forward workable solutions for a settlement somewhere or the other, something that can be at least accepted by both sides and is more fair. It's not fair in absolute terms. However, it is definitely more fair than what was being proposed before. But one of the highlights of this plan is it completely disavows the idea of forced displacement. It also obliges Israel to withdraw from the Gaza Strip, even though there's no timetable set or proposed in this given plan, and it also entails that there should be that Gaza will be administered by a transitional authority composed of Palestinian technocrats, most probably with representatives from the Palestinian Authority as well in this council, headed by international oversight, with several names being proposed as head of this global oversight body, like former Prime Minister Tony Blair and whatnot. And of course, the deployment of an international or a multinational peacekeeping force or security force that will be headed and largely composed of Arab and Islamic states. So all of these provisions are quite logical and could be reluctantly accepted. And on the other hand, it does have some outlandish demands that are not really applicable at this point, at least not immediately. For example, the release of all the hostages and the detainees within 48 hours. This is impossible. This cannot happen because they will need time in order to gather the detainees all around the Gaza Strip. And also it entails that Hamas should forcefully disarm, for example. This is something, of course, that needs to be discussed. And now the Arab states, and J.D. Vance did even mention now that there is a complex negotiation going on, because the Arab states did indeed submit counter proposals and amendments to the American proposals, and the Americans are listening to them. So all of this is good. However, it all depends, Mona, on the meeting tomorrow between Trump and Netanyahu. Netanyahu, to answer your question fully, President Trump cannot convince Netanyahu. Netanyahu is beyond being convinced with such a plan. However, he can be compelled to adhere to such a plan by Trump if Trump actually does have the will to do that, because he can. The problem is, Mona, that Netanyahu is more than capable of convincing Trump and leaving a lasting impression on him. So that's why you have to anticipate tomorrow's meeting with great caution.
Exactly. Ms. Chapman, let me here ask you, Trump unveiled this 21-point plan to Arab and Muslim leaders at the UN General Assembly, aimed at ending the war in Gaza, or at least a ceasefire and shaping post-Hamas governance. Now, how does this plan differ from previous attempts by Trump to mediate a deal to end the war or for a ceasefire? And is it a genuine attempt from your own perspective?
Well, Mona, and greetings to your viewers and to your other guest, Dr. Osman. And this agreement is a seismic shift. I agree with Dr. Osman. This is something new, and this is something that is designed to move the process forward. It's also designed to create buffer layers between Hamas and Israel. But as Dr. Osman noted, there are several major obstacles. This is against a backdrop of the United States being viewed as untrustworthy because of our previous unconditional support for Israel, and in addition to our possible complicity in the strikes on Doha and other events that have happened that have shaken the world's faith and trust in the United States to be an honest broker. And at the same time, as Dr. Osman pointed out, Netanyahu has confessed that he has never intended to allow a two-state solution, and he is opposed. So this is finally out in the open, and having these factors admitted honestly will allow us to move forward. And yes, I do agree with Dr. Osman. There are obstacles that should be worked out with negotiation. A great example is, will the ceasefire begin first, or will the hostages be returned? Will there be reconstruction? There is a lot of confusion, not just with the makeup of the international force that would, whether it would be Arab force or whether it would be comprised of soldiers from Western nations, the presence of former Prime Minister Tony Blair heading up any administrative governing force. So there are a lot of details that need to be negotiated. One obstacle, not so much the negotiation of the details, but as your other guest pointed out, America, especially President Trump, seems to have this take it or leave it, here is our deal. And this approach will not work. We are at a point with Palestine where we need ongoing negotiations, and we need all of these details, definitions. What is the definition of gradually that Palestinian governing force would finally come into effect? Is this 1 year? Is this 10 years? So we need definitions for words like gradually. And once again, details on the makeup of the force, who will administer these transitional committees. So there are a lot of details that need to be worked out. And right now, the main obstacle is Netanyahu's stated intransigence, plus the United States' lack of trustworthiness, and our perception as not being an honest broker, but weighing heavily on the side of Israel. There is too much pressure on Trump domestically for him to tip the scales, put his thumb on the side of Israel, because there's so much resistance on the part of Americans who want to see this resolved and who want the genocide to end. So Trump is not just going to be negotiating with the international community, negotiating with Israel. He's also going to be negotiating with the public here at home, who are essentially fed up with the situation in Gaza. We see our humanitarian foundation is becoming complicit in war crimes. So this is unacceptable to the international community. The meeting tomorrow with Netanyahu will reveal a lot. The world will be waiting to see what Trump says when he comes out of that meeting. If, as part of his pattern, he listens to the last person who has his ear. So can he come out of this meeting with Netanyahu still purpose-driven towards finding a solution that will work for Palestine,
Yes,
and not just a solution that Netanyahu is pushing for?
indeed. And that is the last point that you spoke about, Ms. Chapman, is the most important. Let me go here to Mr. Osman. And Mr. Osman, as you said, respectively, Trump's meeting with Netanyahu is taking place tomorrow after the UN General Assembly week. That is witnessing a kind of or this week has witnessed international mobilization for the Palestinian cause, as we've seen all together. And also Netanyahu's speech that he gave to an empty hall, as we followed up all together. What does this context affect the meeting and its outcome, especially when Trump's plan is currently on the table? And what do you think? What should we be expecting from this meeting? This is a very much, as you said, much anticipated meeting that we are all awaiting here.
To be brutally honest with you, Mona, the context and the dynamics of the relationship between the United States and Israel, and between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu in particular, go completely unaffected by what transpired in the General Assembly and the recognitions in the speech in the empty hall and all of these shameful appearance or projection of Israel's appearance in the United Nations. It doesn't really matter in this context because Israel acts as a pariah that enjoys impunity, and the United States accords it this impunity, and President himself doesn't really care much about the United Nations itself. The man, when he was giving his speech to the United Nations, he insulted the United Nations, insulted even some of the present states, ridiculed the United Nations, and made fun of it. So this is not really something that Trump would really care about. Oh, you have been criticized by the UN, Netanyahu. You have to back down and stop the war. No, he doesn't care about that. But what he does care about, and this is what I truly agree with, what Ms. Chapman has said. What she said is basically music to my ears. That a core portion of Trump's core constituency, of his base, is enraged by what's going on in Gaza. We even have some very prominent right-wing pundits and influencers and public figures, someone like Ken Owens, for example, even someone like Tucker Carlson, both very core Trump supporters who are followed by the millions. They are very critical of what's going on in Gaza, and they also criticize the nature of the relationship between the United States and Israel. They do view that now the United States is sometimes puts the interests of Israel in the region before the interests of the United States in the Middle East. So this is the only thing that might be going for us as people who support the Palestinian cause in tomorrow's meeting, so to speak. However, on the other hand, Netanyahu is sparing no effort. Netanyahu vowed from the podium of the United Nations that he will occupy Gaza, that he will impose his government on Gaza, a civil government, as he called it, or a civil authority, which means that he's completely beyond what the American president has proposed to the Arab leaders, and that he has his own view. And on the ground, the Israeli army is proceeding with this operation in Gaza City. Each and every day they secure more territory, demolish more buildings, kill tens of people, scores of people, and sometimes hundreds of people. Over 66,000 people are documented deaths so far. So it doesn't seem that anything that Netanyahu is being constrained or impeded in any way. And also, I believe, and I do guess that even Netanyahu now is mustering that support he has within the domestic power centers in the United States. I'm sure right now that many of the Zionist lobbies are scrambling in order to sabotage Trump's plans, for example, and to pressure him into resuming his unconditional support for Netanyahu's war on Gaza without obliging him to end or pressuring him to end the war. Even his meeting, and we spoke about that, you and I, before the air, Mona, the meeting he had with some evangelical social media influencers who are core supporters of Israel and who have millions of followings in Trump's core constituency or power base. So he seeks to use those influencers, for example, in order to pressure Trump further and this current US administration to resume its support for Israel. All of this will be revealed. The results, the great unveiling, will be revealed tomorrow in that very pivotal meeting between Trump and Netanyahu. We will see whether Trump will actually stand by his word and invest in U.S. alliances and U.S. interests in the Middle East and in the Arab world, or will he be once again seduced by Netanyahu's charm and intimidated even by his underhanded means in order to completely back away from the commitments he made to the Arab states in his initiative and the genocide then unfortunately resumes and keeps unraveling in the Gaza Strip. We will see what happens, Mona, within a few hours, I guess.
Well, we will see, Mr. Osman, who has the upper hand, and that is very important here. Ms. Chapman, let me go here to Israeli far-right ministers like Itamar Ben-Gvir openly rejected the plan, saying Netanyahu has no mandate to end the war without total victory. So even if Netanyahu accepts, what will that reveal? And how does that reveal the internal Israeli pressure? And would that pressure limit Trump's leverage? What do you think?
Well, Netanyahu is under a great deal of domestic pressure at home. His cabinet is torn between the IDF generals who say we cannot hope to win in Gaza, we're losing soldiers, they're traumatized, and the more radical Greater Israel faction, such as Smotrich, who want to send in the IDF and demolish all of Gaza. And so Netanyahu is under a great deal of domestic pressure. And we're actually seeing this in video that's coming out from his time in America over the weekend at the United Nations, which is once again angering the American public. We are having a civil war in social media, as your guest, Dr. Osman, mentioned. Some of our most respected newscasters and media personalities, such as Tucker Carlson, are now, they're essentially bringing everything out on the table with the being honest as far as Netanyahu's influence on American politicians, Netanyahu's influence on the American public, their constant propaganda. Another thing that's very significant, we just had 250 state senators go to Israel, all expenses paid. They have come back to the United States, and now they're receiving a great deal of criticism and viewed as propagandists. So this is just one more indication that the American public is no longer accepting Israel and Netanyahu's basically the spin that they've been putting on everything. And the other thing the American people are very concerned about, this is sort of overshadowing Palestine, is we know that Netanyahu does want to attack Iran. This is a completely different topic, but the threat of World War II looming over America, the Middle East, and the world is also a big driver that is changing public perception of what the path forward is in the Middle East. So once again, getting back to the 21-point plan, this is just the opening of negotiations. We need Trump to be flexible and not just be a mouthpiece for Netanyahu. We need J.D. Vance to listen to our other negotiating partners. The details are all details that can be settled at the negotiating table. The biggest obstacles, once again, are the conditions: lack of trust in America, suspicion that Netanyahu will act to undermine any agreement and sabotage it once it is in place, which is why the restrictions on IDF activity are so important. And once again, our Arab partners and the international community have more leverage now than ever before on the United States, perhaps not on Netanyahu. He will do what he wants to do at great risk to his country, but there is a great deal of leverage on Trump and the United States because of the entangled issues of world energy supply, energy prices, world trade, and essentially the shifting of global trade and international relations away from the United States, de-dollarization, and the creation of alternative economic, financial, and trade systems without the United States. This is making America desperate. This is making Trump desperate for relevance, as the limits of our military power and our diminishing influence on the world stage are becoming exposed, specifically because of our actions and our failures in the Middle East. A great example is our failure against Ansar Allah in Yemen. So this highlights that smaller actors, as well as larger actors like Qatar, have a great deal of influence over the United States and Donald Trump at this time. The main thing is this plan is important to get everyone to the negotiating table and to keep talking even while these insurmountable differences are playing out. Another difference is whether we can have reconstruction. At the same time, IDF is operating against Hamas in isolated areas in Gaza. So there will be a lot of details to work out. However, this is a positive first step.
Mr. Osman, as we said, or as Ms. Chapman here said, and we followed up, Netanyahu is under pressure from far-right allies demanding the continuation of this war, what they called the total defeat of Hamas. While on the other hand, opposition are very much against his speech that he came with before the UN General Assembly. And inside, we're seeing Israelis rallying, demanding a Gaza deal. Now, what do you think about this internal Israeli division, and would they undermine this plan's chances or boosts its chances? What do you think?
Well, Mona, whenever a deal is on the table with regards to Gaza, Netanyahu is usually under a two-pronged pressure of some sort. He is and from two opposite sides. On the one hand, he is pressured by his far-right allies in the government who tell him, don't you even think about taking that deal or ending the war without the annihilation of the people of Gaza, basically, because basically this undercuts or cuts the way on their expansionist agenda, which seek to depopulate the Palestinian territories and replace the Palestinians with Israeli settlers. So this is something that they pressure him from one side not to accept the deal, or else they will withdraw from the government, and hence his government collapse and he loses power. And of course, this is Netanyahu's worst nightmare because he's a power-hungry Machiavellian maniac, as we all know. On the other hand, the Israeli members of the Israeli left, and also the families of the detainees and many others, regular Israelis, do want to end to this war, do want the detainees and the hostages back. They do not necessarily care about the well-being of the Palestinians.
And we've seen also Yair Lapid and Lieberman and what they said, the opposition inside Israel, and what they really said about that matter.
Exactly.
Also.
But
yes.
you know, Mona, like people like Lieberman and Lapid, both are equally despicable people as Netanyahu. They are just saying this because out of spite of Netanyahu, because they don't like him. But those two guys are also in the right wing, and if they are in power, they would do exactly what Netanyahu is doing. So it's not a Netanyahu problem; it's an Israel problem at this point. The Israeli state and Israeli society, unfortunately, has grown radicalized beyond nationalistic, beyond any a time in previous history. Even the first Israeli settlers in 1948, and even before that, since the late 19th century, never have we seen such a radicalized absolutist breed of Israeli Zionists, unfortunately. So we are living at a very precarious time that are imposing very challenging realities. So of course we cannot really place our bets on what happens inside Israel, because Netanyahu is in a strong point, unlike other people believe. He is standing on solid ground. The problem usually is whether he can secure the perpetuity of U.S. support. And this is what now is coming to the test, because right now the Americans are proposing a deal, or proposing an initiative that definitely will not be to the liking of Netanyahu. And if he accepts it, probably he will lose power eventually, even though it does give him some results and outcomes that he might mark it as a victory. For example, if Hamas agrees to this armament and to abandoning the governance of Gaza and the release of the detainees, this can be marketed as a victory. But we all know that the true aim of this war is not the destruction or the defeat of Hamas or the release of the detainees and the hostages. We all know that, unfortunately, the true aim of this war is the depopulation of Gaza. It's genocide. It's ethnic cleansing. This is the sad reality, Mona. So the only ones who can rein Netanyahu and the Israelis in are the Americans, the Trump administration and President Trump himself. He has to make this strategic choice, either to be a peacemaker as he proclaims himself to be, or to perpetuate this warmongering and perpetual state of committing genocide as well.
Right. That was Mr. Mohammed Osman, international relations specialist, and Ms. Ginger Chapman, lawyer and political analyst. Thank you so much for your very valuable insights here. And that concludes today's episode of In Depth. Many thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.